welcome into the fantasy football universe. I am Jesse Bowler, and I am with Chase St. Dennis, aka Aaron's son.
God damn
it's Jeremy Short.
How do I change that? I didn't even know.
We're off to a rousing
It's off
start.
Exactly. This is what we do. We are 100% professional all the time.
How do I edit that?
You go to settings, and then you just do the like general or something. It's not a big deal. I just thought it was hilarious. But
I didn't even notice he's been streaming Fortnite, and I haven't been able to do anything because I had a house issue here, and I can't even find it. Where the hell is that? Anyways, do what you got to do. I'm going to try and work on this.
It's all good. Don't worry about it. We're here talking our top 5 2024 rookie quarterbacks and who we have that line up with consensus, who doesn't line up with consensus, where we are with these guys. How are you guys doing with these rookie quarterbacks? What are you thinking about this class overall, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we have a big 3 at the top. Some might even say a big 4, especially if you're Chase St. Dennis over here, loving that big 4 action. And then we're doing a top 5, but really there's only about 6 QBs in this class worth discussing in terms of fantasy rookie drafts, right? So we'll hit them all. I'm sure it doesn't look like Bo Nix is included here. I'm sure we'll hit on him a little bit when we talk about Penix, but yeah. Otherwise, we know what to expect here, but we'll go through the guys and, we'll give you our takes on them and what you can expect from fantasy going forward this year.
I legit can't figure out how to change my name. It's really bothering me. Damn kids.
So
if anybody knows, feel free to message because I don't know how to change this. Oh, is it down here?
Yeah,
anyway, there it is. It's down here.
You got it? You're like, yes, success. Yeah. So let's jump into this class. We'll talk about the big. It's really like when we look at this in as far as tiers, the way our rankings set up. This guy is kind of by himself, and everybody knows who it is. It's Caleb Williams. He comes in 6'1", 214. He's our 101 in Superflex. He's still a top 6-7 pick in 1 QB draft. So what makes him so special? Where he's like everyone's 101, and you can make the case for wide receiver, but most people are happy with him. Aaron. What is the upside with Caleb Williams?
I don't even think he is my 101. So you threw that to the wrong person. He is not my 101. I honestly, you know what the funny part is? As this draft process is going on and on, I've kind of grouped these together as a top 3 where if I have the 101, I'm trading. I've been telling my buddies trade down to like the 102 or 103, take one of the other quarterbacks and get, a late first for it. If someone really wants Caleb, trade down, take Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy and get, a late first and early second. Give me Adonai Mitchell and JJ over to Caleb. I don't know. I think I quoted, what was my viral post? I quoted the Kevin Costner draft day where I think it's a character issue for me. You ever have those guys that go out there and they seem to just command respect on the field? And, they're out there yelling and screaming at their teammates and they're out there, they're pissed off and they play with passion. Caleb Williams seems soft. I know I'm going to get tons of flack for it. He just seems soft. And I don't know, maybe it's crying on the sideline to mama, but anytime he faced a good opponent too, I don't know. I think he feasted on the bad teams. I know he beat good teams, but I don't necessarily not have him as my 1. It's a group of 3 for me. And I'm willing to take whoever falls to me. I'm no longer trying to trade up to get him. And it got to the point, I think, where I may have Marvin Harrison Jr. as my 1. I'm starting to look at this class differently. I'm not really in love with any of the quarterbacks here. So I'm sure you guys will disagree with not Chase St. Dennis. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think not Chase St. Dennis is having an issue with not having nail polish on Caleb Williams' nails. I don't care.
I forgot that.
I don't care. The dude can wear whatever kind of nail polish he wants to wear. There's a couple of things about Caleb Williams. Let's just quickly talk about his game. He can make pretty much all the throws. He's got a good command in the pocket. The guy's got a powerful arm. He's mobile. He can move around. All right. We like everything that Caleb Williams can do on the field. Off the field, however you feel about it, I don't think it matters because we know where he's going. He's going to Chicago. He's got all the weapons around him that you could ask for. You hope that the offensive line is going to hold up. They should be even better this year. With everything that's in place for Caleb Williams, it's really hard to see him failing for me. He's just going to have to be a colossal bust at this point, because I can't think of a top drafted quarterback that has landed in as good a spot as this, with a defense that's on the rise, with an offense that has this many weapons. So I really like the way it's set up for him. And if he can just be kind of an average rookie quarterback, I think he's going to produce in year one.
You just listed all the reasons why it's not Caleb for me. I think JJ has a better arm. I think Daniels is better on the run. I think Caleb is okay. Like, he's good. I don't think he's the best at any of it. He may be the most all around complete. I think JJ makes the most I think he is the best arm talent. I think he has better arm strength. I think he just makes the most precise throws. I don't know. I've been lower on Caleb Williams the whole time, and it's not just the nail polish.
Yeah, I think it more comes down to like what these teams were asking them to do. USC was basically asking Caleb Williams to carry the entire roster last year because that defense was atrocious. You saw every game was a shootout. Even when he was putting up 35 points in a game, they would still lose. Like, this is how good he was on offense. It really didn't matter. And on the flip side, we talk about this with JJ McCarthy. Like, they literally asked him to just carry that offense, and he did a very good job doing what he was doing. But you're basically comparing kind of apples and oranges in their situation. So, Aaron, what would it take you to, like, what's the package you're looking for if you're talking about moving down from the 101? What are you looking for in addition? Is it like 2 mid-round, first-round picks, or like what are we talking about here?
Depends. I'm looking for – okay, so we're assuming Caleb's going 101, so I would need to move down no further than 104 because I'd still want either Marvin Harrison Jr. or JJ or Jaden Daniels. I'm not so in on Drake May, so I would still only need to move down 3 or 4 spots. I'm starting with a late first, like somewhere in the range of 108, ideally, because I think the cliff hits at 110, but I'd probably be willing to go down as far as an early first or early second. I guess it depends on how high you are on some of the running backs too. I know the ACL issue is a worry, but I like Jonathan Brooks. I like Trey Benson. So I don't know. I guess that's a spot where I'd have to read my draft room specifically and my needs. I know don't draft for need, but I'd still like to be able to land either Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy. And I'd really like to either secure Jonathan Brooks or, if I could get, I don't know, Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr., something like that. I think I'd be willing to do it. Or even if I could trade down and get next year's first and take the 104, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, I think that's more than like the fair ask for anyone looking to do down. Jerry, would you be looking to move up to get Caleb Williams, or in the Caleb Williams situation, are you more looking to move down off of him?
No, I mean, I'm probably holding. If I have the 101, I'm more than comfortable taking him there. I think the issue for me with Caleb Williams and his value comes in startup drafts. I've seen him going at the tail end of the first, very beginning of the second. By like 203, he's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's too rich in a startup. There's just as good as I think he will be. There are a lot of unknowns there, and I just prefer a more capable. Like, I'll take Dak over him at the moment, and I'm not in love with Dak Prescott, the fantasy QB. I think his value is heavily boosted from what he was able to put together at the end of last year. Caleb Williams, I think, is certainly capable of getting there, and he's obviously got the longevity on his side. He's got at least 10 years on Dak if he sticks in the league. That said, I want to make sure that he can do it. But as far as a 101 rookie pick, yeah, no issues there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it gets really interesting because we have a couple, like when we look at startup values, the 102 and 103 are also going pretty close to that. They're in the second round, mid-second round range. So ideally, if you want to move back to the 102, 103, you can still get a nice plus. So if someone like Aaron's situation, if you're not interested in Caleb Williams, I think his price point is so good, you can still move off and get really good value. But let's jump into our QB2, who seems pretty decisive depending on who you talk to. We talk about his sack rate, his pressure, like it's through the roof. But he's also like the Johnny Knoxville of football just because he's reckless and he can give you 80-yard touchdown calls. No problem. And that's Jaden Daniels. He slides in just above Drake May for us with the 102. In one QB drafts, he's more like a late first-round picks. All right, Aaron, since you said you were in on Jaden Daniels, why don't you give us the pitch on Jaden Daniels?
Rushing upside, Anthony Richardson, except skinnier. Buy low on him now. You could probably get him much lower when that elbow pick came out. I don't know what the hell was that thing real? Was that Photoshopped? Does his elbow really look like that?
Yeah, it's like you see the pictures and when they're in the mid throwing, sometimes they have the weird like it's pulling the tendons, the arm muscle. It
That's
was just a perfect
disgusting.
photo shot. It was ugly. I
That
looked
was
at that and I was like,
gross.
oh, this is
Oh.
awful.
Yeah, no, I'm not really interested in his arm. Like, I think his arm's all right. I think he has the worst arm out of the three here with Caleb and JJ. I'm excluding Drake May. Drake May is my 4. So when I say it's 3, it's not Drake May, but it's rushing upside. It's Jalen Hurts all over again. I don't think he has a great arm, but like I said, he's a little. How big was anybody remember how big Richardson is? I feel like he's significantly
way
He's
thicker.
like 230.
230, 240.
I was gonna say I feel like he's a lot slimmer than Richardson. And if you see him out there, I said this when I did the thumbnail for one of our graphics with him on it, and I said, did I screw that up? Is he really that thin? But he's really that thin. Yeah, it's all rushing upside nowadays. He's a dual threat Konami code there, but he is. I think he's my 2, but that's because I have Caleb at 3. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know people are worried about him as far as a quarterback, but Zach Arishan did a nice piece on this where he said even players like Anthony Richardson gain value by basically doing nothing last year. He played 4 games. He played left halfway through it. He still put up almost 20 points per game. People saw the upside, they see it, and he was insulated with the draft capital. And he actually rose where Anthony Richardson's the 108 in startup picks right now. So I don't think we have to have so much concern with him because going into U tier, you saw Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett, they all gain value. So as long as this guy has a draft capital, which we assume he's going to have, I'm fine with it.
The draft capital isn't what worries me. I think ultimately Caleb will end up as my 1 because as Jeremy was saying, Chicago's going to be the nicest situation. Whoever goes 2, 3, 4, we got some ugly situations. Like Patriots ain't going to improve your value. Washington, I don't hate Washington. I like some of their weapons, but like I think whoever goes 1, which is going to be Caleb, is going to end up as the 1 just because it's the safest landing spot. Who's after that? After Washington and New England,
it's
who's
Arizona.
next?
Probably the Vikings once they figure it all out.
So Washington or Minnesota, I don't hate. That's one where if say JJ didn't go top 5, but he went. What is Minnesota 10?
I think
they're at 12, but the assumption is they're going to trade up.
Yeah, yes. Well, say they even get up to 8 and they take him. I like him there at 8 better than I like Say we go with the consensus and it goes Caleb, Daniels, May, and then you get JJ further back, but it goes to Minnesota. I think then I'm taking JJ over Daniels and May just because of the landing spot. Like, wouldn't you rather have the guy playing in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson than Washington or New England? Chicago, obviously, you're not going to get dinged there. They've got some weapons, but I don't like the 2 or the 3 landing spot there. And that's what we've seen that with a lot of situations where these quarterbacks, they go 2nd or 3rd overall, and the spot they go to, Zach Wilson, sucks for fantasy, and they're dead before they ever get it. Well, Mac Jones with the Patriots, he goes in and the team sucks pretty bad, and maybe he sucked all along, or maybe he just went into a shitty situation that rushed him, but it can kill their value pretty quickly. Whereas you get a team with like Chicago, who is the 101, but they've got a little bit more on the side of weapons. Maybe he will hold his value longer. Or like I said, I think Minnesota would be the best landing spot of any of those 4. So that's like I said, that's why this changes. It's such a tight group for me that landing spot, I think they're all going to get similar draft capital unless one really falls. But I think I'm going to end up grading them based on landing spot.
Yeah, and that 100%. That makes a lot of sense. Like Jeremy, if Jaden Daniels goes to the Patriots, what are you doing with him in this situation? Are you going to knock him down so far? Or are you still going to have him as the QB2 in the class?
Man, as the resident Patriots fan, I know that there's plenty of Patriots fans who are happy enough with what the Patriots have done this offseason in terms of just totally revamping their coaching staff. I don't know if that's all going to work, man. Like, there's just a lot of new in New England right now. And I'm not loving, as most fantasy analysts aren't, I'm not loving any quarterback diving into New England, be it Jacoby Brissett or a rookie guy or whatever. The nice thing is, and what we can hang our hat on, is exactly what Aaron said earlier, is that rushing upside. Jaden Daniels ran for over 3,000 yards in his college career. He absolutely was dominant. We saw it last year. He won the Heisman, for God's sake. Like, like, let's not discount what this man can do with his legs. He's Justin Fields on the football field. He's electric in that way for fantasy, right? And Justin Fields was putting up 50-point games when he's the starter. If he's ever the starter again, we know that we can rely on that insane fantasy upside. And that's what I'm looking for in Jaden Daniels and drafting him, regardless of where he goes. If he goes to New England, we know no one's going to be open. So he's going to have to run like all the time. He's going to run 20 times a game, right? If he goes to Washington, I don't love it in the Cliff Kingsbury system, but at the same time, we know that there are guys there who can get open. We'll know they're going to scheme some stuff up. And we know that Cliff Kingsbury is going to have this guy in the shotgun formation, holding the ball with every opportunity to run. So, yeah, you're drafting him because of what he can do with his legs and the hope that all of that's going to translate into fantasy points consistently, which is the one thing that Justin Fields wasn't able to do.
We're assuming that all of these top 4 guys go to spots where they're week 1 starters. And that kind of scares me. Like, I know we've been spoiled lately and these guys have walked in and been great, but historically speaking, highly drafted quarterbacks going to shitty teams who have to start from week 1, it doesn't typically turn out all that well. And you've got to assume out of these 4, if that's the case, 2 of them are going to bust. Like, well, I know it was a bad draft class, but what happened was it Trey Lance busted, although that San Fran team wasn't even bad. Zach Wilson, like we've seen it historically. I know last year Richardson looked like he was on fire. CJ Stroud was awesome, but when's the last time we had 2 quarterbacks go to what looked to be shitty destinations and turn out to be studs? Like, I don't think if these guys go to Chicago, New England, Washington, Minnesota, I don't think we should expect all 4 of them to be hits. I think we should expect at least 2 of them to be flat out busts. Like, what do you guys think?
I think you're onto something. And I think this is why people are pushing those top 2 wide receivers in particular, and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors ahead of this, like tier 2 quarterbacks. Like, people have Caleb kind of just in tier 1 by himself. And then we're getting into the Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, where people are like, I'm taking them 2 and 3 because they trust the insulation and safety those guys have. Yep. Because we talk about this with Jaden Daniels. But last year with CJ Stroud, people hated his landing spot because they're like, oh, it's Houston's terrible situation. Turns out he's a really good quarterback, and that's the most important thing. So if either one of these guys comes in lightning hot and lights it up, like, they kind of insulate themselves in that way. And for me, I think Drake May is a lot safer from that perspective. But if you want to chase the upside, I get it with Jaden Daniels. Like, it totally makes sense.
That's interesting because, like, Marvin Harrison, I think we're saying he's safe because everyone's assuming he's going to Arizona and he's the one, correct? Where do we think Neighbors goes? Like, there's some bad landing spots that make me worry. Like, Neighbors goes to the Giants, and I don't love that.
Yeah, he's getting 200 targets if he goes to the Giants, though. So, like,
Daniel Jones targets, like, I don't know. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I'm personally lower on Neighbors. I just don't think he's as complete as, say, like Odunze, so that's why he's my 3. But yeah, I'd be a lot more worried if either one of those guys don't have a good quarterback. Like, say they pass Marvin Harrison, he ends up with the Giants. I'm not gonna love that either because just the upside's not there, and that's the whole situation we're chasing with these guys. So it gets really interesting when you get into landing spots, and it's gonna kind of shift our rankings, I think, pretty significantly. Then whoever goes to the Giants, somebody goes to the Jets, or somebody ends up with the Chargers. Like, there's gonna be a lot of shifting with these guys. So
I'd like to see the Chargers take a receiver instead of Brock Bowers. They've cleared out a lot of room there. I know everyone thinks, oh, well, Quentin Johnson might just take over, or Josh Palmer, or whoever the hell's left there. Malik Neighbors goes there. I like Malik Neighbors to the Chargers a lot more than the Giants.
Yeah, it's Justin Herbert, right? That's one of the best quarterbacks in the leagues. I would very much enjoy that. So I think that's the whole, when we talk about these tiers and shifting between tiers, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. Even if, say, like JJ goes to Minnesota, like, I'm going to be a lot higher on him than I was, even though I'm not a super big JJ fan. Sorry, Aaron. He's just not my cup of tea. But in the Minnesota offense, like, I'm going to be much more comfortable drafting him higher. So it just kind of is what it is.
It's not that I'm super high on JJ. I just don't think any of these 4 quarterbacks can't miss like they seem to be. Like, I know everyone's said Caleb Williams is the best prospect since Andrew Luck. He's not Andrew Luck, though. Like, Andrew Luck was a can't miss. This guy, I'd say he'll probably be good. I don't think he's a can't miss, though. Like, this is not – I don't think he's generational. Maybe, you know what the funny part? If you had asked me this a year and a half ago, I was a lot higher on him a year and a half ago. I didn't like anything he put on tape in his senior – or his last year. I don't know if he was a senior. I think he was a junior.
Junior, yeah.
And that's the other reason why I've been higher on JJ. JJ's significantly younger than the rest of these guys. You give me a quarterback who's only been in college for 3 years as opposed to some of these guys – they've been there, 4 or 5? Some of them are almost 25 years old. Give me the young guy.
This
All
is
right.
Jaden Daniels. He's been 5 years starting, so like that is also a whole other thing where we're talking about Richardson, who was a baby coming out last year. Daniels is a lot older, so there is concerns with his development as a quarterback. Like we have to bring that up too.
Yeah, very true.
All right, let's head on over to our QB3. I know we've been kind of like shitting on him a little bit, but it's still Drake May. He's the prototypical quarterback build. He's fast. He has a good arm. He can kind of do everything, and he was UNC's basically entire offense. Now, the issue was his senior season was worse than his junior year last year, his junior year was worse than his sophomore year, where it's like worst tape. Everything just kind of fell apart. So we went into the year talking about there's a top 2 with Caleb and Drake May, and everybody's higher on him. We see him kind of falling because of this last year win. What are your guys' biggest red flags with him and the biggest upside case for him for Drake May? Let's start with you, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, he has all the talent in the world. It's all there. The issue, I think, is, number one, like you said, he struggled more so this year than last year in the ACC, right? So outside of 1 or 2 teams, right, we're talking about lesser competition than Jaden Daniels was facing. And then, of course, the issue of, weapons. They didn't really build they didn't have anything in place around him. So understood why those numbers fell a little bit. But at the same time, you really want to see, you want to see, it's tough in college, but you want to see almost that CJ Stroud effect that he had at Houston last year, where he's elevating his teammates. And when you look at Tez Walker, whoever else was on that team there, I mean, he wasn't really doing that, right? You saw missed throws, you saw some inaccuracies, you saw some poor decision making. So for me, Drake May is my clear 3. I would love to bump JJ ahead of him, but right now I just want to see what the NFL does before I'm confident enough to make that move. But yeah, Drake May for me is the clear QB3 here, at least. And I think he has a lot of growing up to do still.
And with the kind of the thing that's discounted with him is his rushing upside. Like that seems to get swept under the rug. He's pretty athletic and he does a lot of good things for you. Aaron, where are you comfortable taking Drake May in rookie drafts? Like where's the spot you're going to pull the trigger on him? Because you seem to be lower on him than the clear top 3 because JJ's your 3rd guy. So where's the spot for you?
I'm taking him before I get to Bowers. I would say he's my bridge. I take 3 QBs, 3 receivers, then May. I'm not low on him. I know it's going to sound like helmet scouting, but I can't look at him and not see Sam Howell. And I was the Sam Howell guy, so I don't hate him. It's just Caleb's going to get the best landing spot out of relatively in Chicago. Jaden Daniels is going to get a crappy landing spot like Drake May, but I think out of the 2 who get crappy landing spots, Jaden Daniels, like Jeremy said, he could go to New England and still make up for it on the ground. I don't think Drake May can make up for a crappy offense on the ground. And I think I like JJ more because he's more likely to fall to a Minnesota or something. So I just feel like Drake May is the one who's most likely to be put in a crappy situation. And I think he's the least likely to have enough talent and rushing ability to overcome it. Like you said, he's immature. He seems like Sam Howell 2.0. He's immature. He makes some bad decisions. He has plenty of talent. This is Sam Howell, and I know it's helmet scouting, but I think he's the most likely bust out of the 4. So I'm taking JJ, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and probably Roma Dunze as well. And then, like I said, he's my next guy off the board before I would go into the 2nd tier, however you want to grade it, of receiver, or before you get Brock Bowers. A lot of people would probably take Bowers over him, though, depending on how they feel about him. I'm anti-tight end in the 1st round. So for me, I don't think this isn't a case that's going to add up to, like, this is going to be, I know he's 6'4", 223 and not 5'10" or whatever the hell Bryce Young was, but Bryce Young just seemed to be, he had a lot of the size and the different negatives and this and that. And then he was put in probably the worst situation and he was the one who failed. So I feel like Drake May is going to go into his rookie year with the most working against him. And that's why I'm out on him. I don't think he's all that great all the way around. So
the thing for me is, if we're to believe some of these reports that we've been hearing since the college football season ended and draft season really began from media outlets, people were saying Drake May is the 2nd quarterback off the board. Washington, he's going to Washington. If Drake May goes to Washington, I totally agree that that's not an ideal landing spot for any rookie quarterback. At the same time, it tells you that at least the NFL believes that he's the second best quarterback in this draft. And to be drafted that highly, to go to a spot where you have Terry McLaurin in place, Jahan Dotson, who's not terrible. Who do they have? Zach Ertz, right? Who at least functionally can work open, right?
Would you agree though? Washington's not the landmine for me. I know you're going to not want to hear it. New England's the landmine I want to avoid.
Well, I don't think again, if we're to believe reports, New England has no interest in Drake May, and if they get,
I like him more.
If they get to 3 and Daniels is off the board, then they're trading out of the pick, which I think is a smart move. But yeah, I can't fault you for saying Drake May is 107 at this point. I don't hate that at all. I think he's got just a lot to work on. And when you look at his stats from 2022, that's great, but he threw the ball a ton to Josh Downs. We know Josh Downs is a professional wide receiver. All the other guys who were, on that team this year had about half of the receptions that Downs did in 2022. In 2023, they still had that same number because no one could eclipse 50 receptions. They're just not working open. It's a poor talent pool there that he had to work with. At the same time, he's not necessarily elevating guys. So that's really my concern with him. It's the inaccuracy mixed with the fact that, he didn't necessarily show that he had grown into a complete quarterback over the course of his college
it's
career.
It's so hard to project some of this, though. Like, I don't like what anything New England has done, but if you had gone back a year, I said the same thing about Houston. I said, whoever lands in Houston is going to be my lowest out of the 3. They have no weapons. It's like Noah Brown, a couple of rookies who we have one of them's my height. And I'm like, there's nothing there. They're going to feed it to Damian Pearson, blah, blah, blah. And boy, was that wrong. Then you add in, helmet scouting. It's an Ohio State quarterback. Right. And then he turns out to be the stud. Bryce is the bust. So these things are not foolproof. And like I said, just because I don't necessarily like what New England's done, like what do they really have? Like that's what worries me. Like you got Pop Douglas. What do you got? But like I said the same thing about Houston last year. I said, what do you have? You have Noah Brown and some rookies. So maybe the Patriots go in and they get themselves some rookies here in the 2nd or 3rd round, and they get the next Puka Nacua, and all of a sudden Drake May looks better, and it's a bust. So this is
stop putting Drake May on the Patriots. Stop it.
Enough. No, my worst case scenario is actually Jaden Daniels going to the Patriots, because I think Drake May is a better passer and a better overall quarterback. So I think he's able to survive a situation. I worry about Jaden Daniels because, dude, if he gets pressure in that sack rate, that stuff is through the roof. And with the Patriots, we don't know. But like you're saying, I think we discount these situations a little too much year to year, because we just don't know enough going in. And we have all these rookies. Like, there's a ton of good rookie wide receivers in this class. It's one of the best ones we had in a long time. So I think for any situation to flip its head in a year, I think this is the year for some of these offenses we don't like. They bring a couple of these guys in, and, week 6, we're looking around. We're like, all right, say Drake May's in New England. He's doing pretty well, and he's the chemistry's working well with the rookie quarterback and all of that stuff. So I think you can kind of talk yourself into these situations. But, yeah, it's definitely a red flag. It's not like it's, he's going to Chicago or he's going to one of the better offenses of the NFL. It's going to be we're just going to work it up and see how it goes for him.
This is why people who get so angry about this shit on Twitter are morons. We don't know. It's largely projections. You're an idiot. You were wrong on this guy. Do you know how many things have to go right or wrong for this to be right? Or there's no way to project this. The NFL teams do this for a living, and half of them can't tell what quarterbacks are going to be a bust. So You do your best, you put the info together. But like I said, who would have projected last year that the Ohio State quarterback going to a crappy team with a defensive-minded coach being, with his 2 best weapons being rookies? Who would have said, yeah, that sounds like fantasy points. So who could have projected that?
The Patriots new OC is what, Alex Van Pelt? Is that right, Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't know how it's going to shift. We have an idea. But theoretically, we don't know. Same thing with Washington. Kingsbury said he's not going to run the air raid offense. So I don't know what type of offense they're going to run there. And that's the biggest concern for me. I'm like, wait, you're an air raid guy, but you're not going to run it. So yeah, it's just, we have a long way to go. Quarterback's insanely difficult to evaluate.
If you had to pick a team with new coordinator, unknown offense, or new coordinator, Kingsbury offense, I think I'm taking the unknown over Kingsbury. I think, I don't know about you.
Yeah, he's not changing his stripes enough for sure. So let's jump into our QB4. I think a guy that's probably more decisive than anyone else, just because there's so much mystery surrounding him, and that's Mr. JJ McCarthy, the guy that took Michigan. They won the national championship. He did a lot of good things for him. Why don't you give me the pitch on him, Aaron? So, sell me on JJ McCarthy.
I think he's got the best accuracy of a quarterback I've seen since. I said that's the one thing I said about CJ Stroud. I thought he had laser accuracy, and JJ does this. You see some of those. Don't quote me on Patrick Mahomes. He does those weird sidearm laser throws that Mahomes does, and I get the opposite vibe of him that I get from Caleb Williams. He just goes and he's got that winner mentality to him. He just finds a way to get it done. He seems tougher. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that in college. I've been doing this with receivers and running backs for years. You give them the Jim Harbaugh discount. None of their offensive weapons ever come out of Michigan looking good. When's the last time Michigan had a top 10 offensive player? Can you name one?
Like Nico's the closest we've seen. Like,
Nico was
I can't think of anyone else.
Like the 5th round or 4th round.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was the
They just the way he uses them. He's got this old school broken mentality. I know they won, but like they just fed Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum the ball 900 times a game and relied on his defense. JJ McCarthy was a game manager at Michigan because that's what he was told to be. Like I think he had the talent, but with that kind of defense and those guys running the ball, why the hell do you need to let JJ air it out? And the receivers he had at Michigan, Robin Wilson was good, but the receivers he had last year at Michigan, they weren't Marvin Harrison Jr. They weren't what Ohio State had. So why the hell are you playing to your team's weakness at receiver? I think he has some ability to rush. I think he has an awesome, accurate arm. I think he has, with the exception of Joe Milton, probably the strongest arm in the class. I think he makes good decisions. He's not turnover prone. I just think I don't necessarily know if he's going to come out of this class as the stud number 1 QB. I just think he's probably the safest. I think he comes out as, I don't even know who I want to comp him to. Like, I think he's Dak or Cousins, but better. He's got like their safe, consistent level. I don't know. I like him. I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he's a top 3 quarterback. I think he's going to settle in as a low-end QB1 for fantasy.
I mean, getting him in like mid to late first, like that's not bad at all. Like if you get that, you'd be thrilled with that. Jeremy, what are your like more concerns with McCarthy coming out? Like, is there anything holding you back from picking him in that range, or is like this is why he's the QB4 is because we just don't know enough about him?
Yeah, he's just the mystery box, right? Like, you wish that Harbaugh and company would have just like, let go of the reins for like a game, and you could have seen him just uncork it, 50 times or whatever, and just see what that looks like, right? There were times when he had, excellent stretches. Had to come back, but mostly this is a team that was in control from start to finish. They could lean on the running game, but you see it show up in his tape where he has, as Aaron was talking about, like that accuracy is pretty insane. Some of those tight window throws, like that he really shouldn't have been making, were just absolute darts in between 2 defenders to exactly where it needed to be. He throws really well on the boundary. He's able to kind of move around back there in the pocket, buy a little bit of extra time and deliver it, on target. And that's something that, you watch a lot of these other QBs in the class that just don't have the ability to do consistently. McCarthy, even though we haven't seen a ton of it, seemingly has done it consistently. His completion percentage is impressive. And like Aaron said, he didn't have the best weapons in the world either. But he's delivering the ball where it needs to go most of the time. So yeah, it's hard to knock him other than the fact that we just haven't seen enough of it. So it's hard to know if this is sustainable over, a Sam Howell type level workload.
Well, like Aaron brought up Andrew Luck earlier. Go look at Andrew Luck's stats with Stanford under Harbaugh. Like he still did not throw the ball a lot. That's just something Harbaugh's always done. So I think there is some credence to that where it's like, we have an incredible offensive line. We have a really good defense. We're just going to grind you to death. And when we need McCarthy, he will win the game for us, and he could do that. So yeah. I think it kind of works both ways with him. It just sucks because we didn't see it. And to go as early as like a top 4 pick or top 5 pick where he could possibly go, I think it takes a lot of golf for a team to like have the faith in what they see, where you're chasing those traits, what you like. So he's very interesting to me is the best way I would like describe it. Like I like some of the stuff I've seen, but I just haven't seen enough where I have 100% confidence in him as some of the other guys, like I do with Caleb, where like I know Caleb is going to be from the ground running, be a very good quarterback. Like everything I've seen from him, I trust. I don't know with McCarthy, and that's the biggest concern with me. But if we're talking about 107, 108 in that range with Bowers, like I'm fine pulling the trigger there. And if he ends up with, like we talk about Minnesota, that's a very good landing spot. You have 2+ wide receivers. I know Hawkinson's injured, but like they still have a good rushing game. They have everything there. So like I'm okay with McCarthy at this range.
Yeah, and would anyone really be surprised if what are they at 5 or 6, the Chargers, if they took McCarthy and then just said, we'll sell Herbert later. We'll sell him in the middle of the draft. Just get our guy now and then sell Herbert later. I mean, that would be a very Jim Harbaugh'ian thing to do, I think.
Just eat that $90 million dead cap hit, yeah.
I just made the mistake of looking over some of your Rashi Rice discourse from today. People are fucking stupid.
Yeah, you want to go on Twitter and just talk to idiots?
I started reading it while you were talking about that, and I got through about 6 comments, and I'm going, why did I start reading this? My God. And then I wanted to type because I was like, he didn't post bragging about it. He replied to someone with a recent trade, and then people are shitting on you for you're supposed to buy low, and I'm going, oh my God, I can't do this. And I had to click off Twitter. I'm like, I got to go back to the show. I can't read anymore. Jeremy's gone.
Yeah. Well, we answered this question from SC, right? It's I think none of us are super high on Drake May, that if he goes to New England, even if he goes at 3, that we would probably still go JJ over McCarthy in that situation, or JJ over May in that situation. Is that correct?
I'd still take Drake May, but it'd be back to back personally. Like I would just be betting on talent. That's the best way I can say it.
I'm taking JJ there.
Yeah. I assume if that happens though, the community is going to shift and JJ is going to push it in the top 3. Like
Agreed.
He might be behind Daniels depending on what happens with Daniels, but like he'll be in that discussion, no doubt about it. So if you have, the 107, 108, and there could be a scenario where Drake May falls to you in rookie draft. So like this, it could flip on its head. So like you have to keep that in mind with these rookie picks that these values are going to drastically change. And it's a ways to go. All right, let's get into our 5th guy, and he's part of the old brigade, the guys that have thrown it a bajillion times, started 90+ games, all this fun stuff. It's the guy from the local guy for me, Michael Penix. All right, he's very interesting. I'll say this because he has good arm strength. He could do enough. Like if you protect him, he's very good. He crumbles under pressure, so like that happens with him over there. Yeah, and if we talk about that, then it gets a little bit different, right? So JJ New England, I really don't want to deal with that.
And I'm taking Drake May.
It flipped. That would be bonkers because that means someone's massively pushing up JJ and they're dropping Drake May. So I mean, unless Minnesota traded up, that's just a whole Pandora's box of things. But let's get back to Penix. Jeremy, why don't you sell me on Penix real quick?
Yeah, it's the arm. I mean, he's got like the knees of a World War II vet, right? But otherwise, like
he said sell.
But otherwise, this guy he's got an arm. He can make the throws. The thing about Penix is that's something really interesting to consider. We talked about May with, kind of doing it with really nothing around him. Penix had the O-line. Penix had a decent running game as a result. Penix had, it's a good running game. Penix had the 3 standout wide receivers who were all looked at very highly in this draft cycle, right? So he had everything in place. And obviously he had the coach and the OC who now have moved on to bigger and better. Grubb now in the NFL, who very well may take Penix to Seattle with him. But yeah, I think that he was in the best possible situation, but he made the most of it, right? He absolutely dominated when it mattered most. The problem was, he kind of fell apart against that insane Michigan front. But otherwise, he did everything else over the course of the season that you wanted to see him do. He threw for nearly 5,000 yards, 36 touchdowns, only 11 picks. The guy's not a runner, obviously, but with another year of health, you can imagine him being able to extend plays here and there a little bit. So, yeah, I think for me, he's clearly above Bo Nix, but he's got everything you want, and he's ready to step in day one, even though he probably won't have to.
Are you worried he may never play football and will be a doctor instead? He's a doctor, right? Why else was he in college for 6 years?
Right.
No, he's not. Oh no, he's just there.
Harley level. Isn't that like a Tommy Boy reference right there?
So he played 20 games in 4 years at Indiana. Then he was good for 2 years at Washington with 3 receivers we're drafting in the top 10 of receivers this year, like I'd be good with it. Dunze, McMillan, and Polk as my receiving core too. So yeah, no, I think I'm going to pass on this one. I don't like any quarterbacks after him. I think for me, he's QB5 by default, but if I haven't drafted a quarterback in the top 4 in this class, I'm not drafting one. I'm trading for one. No, thank you. No.
Yeah, I think it gets really interesting.
Aaron, guess how many quarterbacks threw for more yardage than Michael Penix in college football this year?
0.
And so, look, production doesn't lie, right? So we know he had everything in place around him, but he still put it all together, and that's got to be somewhat on him, right?
Receiving core.
And Grubb's a very good offensive coordinator. That's why he's in the NFL right now. Team's very much like him. I think the one thing that shocked people is his 40 time, and he also like did vertical. The guy's a good athlete. He just doesn't have side to side movement. It's straight vertical movement. So like if he gets up to speed, he can go. But like moving around and like short area quickness is not there from him because of the knee issues. He also has the 2 shoulder issues, but he got cleared by the NFL. So like I don't think it's going to be the biggest concern on him. But someone mentioned Tua a while ago and like how it changed his career with his injuries. I think that's a fair like comp because of what Penix does is very similar to Tua. And Tua is just not the athlete that he was pre the hip injury. So I think these guys kind of similar that way. In the right situation, with a good offensive line and skill position players, we saw what Penix can do. And I think that will happen if he goes through that situation. Now, who knows where he goes in the draft? So I think he's entirely situation dependent. We talk about this with Bo Nix too. He needs to be in a good situation. Like he's not going to be the guy, like say magically New England trades down to the second round, whatever they end up with Penix. That's a disaster. That's not what you want to see from him. So I think it's a little bit different, but yeah, with these two right here.
Is a season of 1,645 passing yards and 14 touchdowns good in college? Because that's his high through 4 years before going to Washington in a loaded offense.
He had them. So he had that one Indiana team top 10, and then he blew it out, and it was that team that crumbled once he got injured. So they were entirely dependent on him. It was his 4th injury, and he was finally like, all right, I'm going to just move along. Let's go find somewhere else. DeBoer was his like OC, I think, back then. And then he shifted. He went to Fresno State. Then he came up to Washington, and then he called Penix and like brought Penix over. So like they had that connection. That's why he went to Washington. And, you know, like he thought about changing his career because of all injuries, and it's really tough to blame him when you have 4 season-ending injuries. Like that's just an absurd. Just very unlucky is the way it shaped out. His career could have been drastically different, but as a quarterback, like he looked massively different. Not like the Bo Nix level upgrade from we're talking about Auburn, where he just looked atrocious, to Oregon. He was still functional in Indiana. It's just another level. Now we have him at the 208 and Superflex drafts. Are you guys like where if he gets, say he goes back half of round 1, are you guys interested in like the early second range for him, or are you still comfortable like the kind of 208 range drafting him?
Yeah, I think he needs to be 205, 206 at the earliest. I want to get in on that, you know, 3rd tier of wide receiver, which we've talked about for a while here, is pretty big, right? You can still get kind of a Ladd McConkey, you know, at least right now in the early 2nd, right? Troy Franklin sometimes slips the early 2nd. You know, there's really some really nice wide receiver value there. And then you're talking about 2 to 3 running backs there as well. I want all those top guys before I want to take a shot on Penix or Nix. So yeah, from the 206-ish, I think that's where I'm comfortable, maybe even 205. But yeah, 208, if he's there, I'll heavily consider him.
He's going to be 24 by the time the season starts. I think you're right.
75 in this class, everybody.
I'm not JJ McCarthy. I think he's going to be, he belongs in the back half of the 2nd round for me, which is why I don't own him anywhere, because in any draft we've done, he never lasts that long. He goes at like the 202, the 203. Was he or early run of quarterbacks? Then one of them, like even now, like JJ, what the top 4 go, what? Top 6 picks, top 8 picks.
They will.
Eight's gonna be the cutoff.
Then you see a couple of running backs, a couple of receivers go, and then someone says, "Oh, I'll take Michael Penix at the 202." I'm not taking Penix at the 202. By the time the spot where he's going, I'm taking the 2nd or 3rd running back off the board, or I'm taking the group of A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, McConkey, Pierce. I'm never getting him ever. Yeah. He's just going earlier than I ever want to take him.
Well, especially if he goes round 1, I think he's going to be an uncomfortable pick for people.
Do we think he goes round 1? Where's he projected to go?
he's like early second-ish range, and with how he did it on his pro day, people are raving about him. So it's entirely in the range of outcomes. Like I don't think it's going to happen with Knicks. I think if it the fifth quarterback who does it, it would be Penix if it's above him. But I think
hadn't
SC
even
brings up an interesting
considered
point.
that. I
Like
hadn't
right
even
here.
considered that here. Well, just like I'm looking on mock draft database, I hadn't even considered him as a potential first. If of course it won't load, so I can tell you where they have him going. Oh, you're right. Early in the second round, someone has him as early as Minnesota at 11.
Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
there's those teams right there, right? They need quarterbacks.
Consensus is 44th overall. I don't. Middle of the second round is not going to get him.
No.
I'm out.
Especially if he goes round one. I think SE brings up an interesting point about like Rattler. Is there anyone outside of the top five, to go to the top five, that you guys are interested in over, say, Penix? Would you throw in like Bo Nix, Rattler, Pratt out of Tulane? Is there anybody that like draws interest from you guys?
Depends on landing spot and draft capital. Pratt isn't bad. Rattler, I know this is going to sound asinine. Joe Milton. The NFL loves to overdraft the quarterbacks who can throw. No, I don't think he's good, but they love to overdraft quarterbacks who can throw the ball 80 yards. So I think he gets higher draft capital, and then maybe he'll come out and throw, a really nice pass for 80 yards in preseason, and I can trade him. But unless someone gets surprising draft capital, like if Penix sneaks into the first round or Knicks, or if any of these guys get early, really for me, I'm out on quarterbacks unless they go first round. So.
Yeah,
I don't think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say Knicks is the only other guy I think you can consider here. I mean, he showed that level of production, but again, like we mentioned with Penix, we're talking about these guys who just kind of came out of nowhere and just went nuclear, which you don't love to see. You prefer they come into their college team and dominate. Michael Pratt's tape was really interesting. I thought he looked good. The problem is, I think he's got smaller hands than Kenny Pickett, right? So he's part of the small hands crew, which never bodes well. And then, Joe Milton, I don't care if he can throw it 80 yards. Is he able to, throw it 8 yards consistently exactly where it needs to be? And the answer is no. So I'm out. I agree with this. I'm out on everybody outside of those top six. Rattler is an interesting one. If he lands somewhere, great. But we saw this the last few years. Who's the guy who went to the Rams? Stenson Bennett.
Oh, yeah.
That Rattler is reminiscent of that situation for me, where it's like, oh, if he could go like in the third round or somewhere to a spot where it's like, oh, maybe you can compete for the job. He's going to be a lot higher than I think. I'm going to be willing to draft him in rookie draft. So I'll probably end up being out on him. And other than the darts, if I need a quarterback, I did this dance last year with Hendon Hooker, where I took a shot on Hooker in the mid-second. But this is what you're talking about. That's not going to pan out. Jared Goff's going to be there forever now. And, if it's not one of these top four guys, who cares?
Yeah, but you'll see guys come along every so often. We saw this Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, guys who go round 2, round 3, round 4, and even Brock Purdy, right? Every once in a while, we get the guy that's just the outlier that's going to hit. But odds are, if you're going from an analytic perspective, it's really difficult outside of round 1, just because you don't have draft capital. So you need the situation. You got to show it early. We saw it last year with like Rod Farva in Vegas. I know that's not his name, but that's what I always call him, right? In O'Connell. And what they do, they bring in Gardner Minshew to like give him competition. So you just have to be really good out the jump and really prove yourself. But more than any other position, it's even harder at quarterback. So I'll take a shot on one of these guys if they fall to the third and they have like decent draft capital. They go day 2. Like, sure, I'll throw a dart on Rattler or, maybe Bo Nix or whatever. But outside of that, I'm just with you guys. I'm not interested in the rest of the class.
My theory has always been I don't draft the guys out who weren't taken in the first round. Even the second or third rounders, they're going to be the day 2 guys. I think are going to go higher than I want to take them. For me, it's always a case of I'll just wait. If I don't get a round 1 quarterback, I'm going to wait and I'm just going to pick up the Aiden O'Connell or Brock Purdy who gets a shot out of nowhere with an injury, because I think they're just as likely to hit off the waiver wire as any of these guys are, in day 2, and you're going to pay nothing for them.
Yeah, I think with these guys that are uncertain of draft capital and have no connection to the team that holds them there, I think you can always buy into them once they start hitting early on where the price does not rise enough. Like year 2, year 3, and we see the price skyrocket with Brock Purdy or whatever. But that first year, people are still so uncertain. You still have the potential if they show it off, you can buy in there for mid-second or whatever, where it's not going to cost you a lot. So I think there are ways to buy into those guys where you don't have to be always in. Just because we talked about Hendon Hooker last year. What happened? Jared Goff balled out, and Jared Goff just got a fat contract extension, right? So that's usually how it works with these guys. So there's only 32 jobs, man. It's tough.
And one thing I'll say too is right now, JJ is like 108-ish in terms of his rookie draft, where he's going in mocks. That's going to change. I think you need to have a top 6 pick in order to get one of these 4 elite quarterbacks in this class. You might even need a top 5 or top 4 pick, depending on how things shake out. So don't assume that you're sitting at 107, 108 and going to have a shot at one of these quarterbacks. If you really need one and really want one, you need to make a deal now before things change up. JJ, I don't think is going to make it past 106.
If you're telling me I can get Bowers or Dunze 107, 108, I'm going to be doing victory laps. So I'm going to be, I think Bowers is the one that's going to fall just because
He'll be 108,
we've tried to project him a million times. It's so hard to find a spot for him.
And he's a monster.
Yeah. What team is he going to? We have no fucking idea. We literally don't know. But I think on that note, that's going to wrap it up for our top 5 consensus QB rankings. Thank you for joining the FS Universe show. As always, check our work on Reddit. That is popping off right now. You can check our website where we have all of our sneak peeks. We're slowly branching into basically the rookie pick versus. We also have our YouTube page, which we're on right now. That's going off. So basically, we're everywhere.
We're in that in-between spot where we're kind of wrapping up rookie content, but up until the draft, there's not much more we can do for rookies, but we haven't quite transitioned into redraft and the veterans. So we're in that like 2-week stretch of kind of like in between where we're going to be running a mock draft Wednesday at 2:00 that I will discuss with you guys after the show. But I'm going to post that link so we can fill that out.
Yeah, we're like you're saying, we're in between. Before we know it, we'll jump fully into the NFL draft. We'll have that kicking off through like until May. But then we'll jump into the offseason, all fun dynasty stuff. So it's, nonstop content here at the Fantasy Football Universe. That's what we're going to be about. So for Jeremy, for Aaron, I want to thank y'all for joining us. And we hope y'all have a good rest of your day. And we'll be stopping by later with a mock draft. So take care, folks.